Hello and welcome back. In the previous videos, we go look at our user guide. We went over the architect, sorry, not the architect, the analyst for brainstorming or helping decide what you wanted to work on and kind of breaking down what you wanted to have created and creating a brief.md. Then from the brief MRD, you talk to the PM agent in an interactive mode or just kind of a fast track mode, which then creates a PRD markdown file. Then from there, we talked to our UI UX expert from that, and it created as you can see here on the left, I've got a brief, a front end spec, and a PRD. And now I'm going to go with the architects. See here, or if you actually want to see additionally, kind of the workflow I have is analyst, project manager, UI UX expert, and the architect. So the architect is going to make a lot of decisions, kind of helping you decide or based on all your previous documents, it's going to make a lot of technical decisions. So I recommend when you work with an architect, you work in a strong model, not auto model. I would usually choose whatever you think is the absolute strongest. In this case, I'm going to choose GPT-5, and then I'm going to call on my architect. I'm going to go add symbol, architect, and we can go start help, kind of see all the commands it can do. And you can see it spit out a bunch of commands that we can use. It's saying, actually make this a little bit bigger. So Winston, the architect, you can create a full stack architecture, create a backend architecture, create a front end architecture, brownfield, so we talked about earlier, greenfield is a brand new project. Brownfield is an existing project where it's going to analyze your existing architecture. You do that usually in your analysis agent, your analyst agent, in identifying your brownfield architecture so it integrates cleanly. Doc output, that's just kind of outputting your current architecture to destination file. And there's a few other commands. One that you'll be using later is sharding. So this document that it's going to create for the architecture is going to be quite verbose and quite long. And AI LLMs have a limit of how much information you can feed them. Usually that's considered a context window. Usually it's about 200K tokens, and this thing will take up probably half of that. So once we finish our architecture at MD, we're going to shard it into smaller files so that it only pulls into the large language model exactly what it needs and not all of the information, but only specifically what it needs at that particular point. So for this purpose, let's go ahead and create a full stack architecture. So we're going to do that architect. Let's make sure we're choosing a smart model. In this instance, we're going to choose GPT-5. And let's go ahead and start. And as you can see, it's going to be analyzing all the previous documentation. It's going to be reviewing the brief, the front end spec, the PRD. It's going to be breaking out in a task and it looking at basically all of the documentation that we've created in the previous steps, and then break it down into a robust document. So you see here, it's reading doc, full stack architecture, and it's thinking. So you see it's reading our PRD, our front end spec, our brief, and it's reading some of the code that I have here previously. You see now it's starting to write out the documentation. And then it's going over the initial section. Let's see here. It's going over the introduction of the full stack application for the GPT key generation app. And it's kind of telling us all the points about it. And now it's kind of asking us if we want to expand or have any questions about that right there. Then it's giving us the option to expand beyond that. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to go to the next section. Now you see here it's evaluating deployment options, how to structure the repository, creating a mermaid diagram. Mermaid diagram is kind of like a markdown file diagram of kind of like a flow chart of either your structure of how the application works or your user interface. There's many different ways that you can use a mermaid flowchart. Actually, there you go. It's talking about the architecture of how it all works. So this is now the first push, or not the first push, but the first generation of how it sees the application working. Going into high-level architecture. Once again, this is all based on our previous discussions with it. So it's going, at this point, you would review this and see if you like how the application is going to work. It's going to be React with MUI. I'm actually not familiar with MUI, but overall, there's a general architecture. You can then say, tell it things that you want to change about the architecture. You'd say, like, the architect, I don't want to use Node.js. Instead, I want to do this in Python, for example. I don't really want to do that right now, but that's the types of things that you could do to have it kind of stay on course or change or align with what we're trying to get done. But for this purposes, I'm just going to kind of keep things simple. I'm going to go ahead and go next on this, go with 1. So it's now moving forward. Now it's spitting out versions of all the technology stack things. The front-end language, it's going to use version 4.95. That's what it's recommending. Obviously, you can ask it to change these to other versions, everything from, lots of stuff, logging, all of that looks fine. Something as you do these things, remember, like I said, you're going to be using GPT-5. But if you see here, you can kind of hover and see what percentage of the token it's using. This architecture is going to use quite a bit of it. If you're working on a really big project, I recommend turning on max mode, which will double your context window size so that you can fit all this information inside of that, so it creates a cohesive and well thought out document. So let's go ahead and go on to the next part. That's fine. I don't really want to change any of this right now, but say I did have thoughts on it, I could just tell it what I want to change and then move on to the next step. So let's go ahead and go into the next step. So now it put out even more information regarding data models and kind of the type of TypeScript it wants to use and artifacts and relationships. And as you can see, it's quite informational. So I want to bore you guys with it. So let's go on to the next part. As you can see, it's pulling together information for the API. And because I asked it to do an API or REST API to be able to use this tool as well, it's kind of covering the standardized format for all of that. Let's go ahead and go to the next steps. So really, architect 1, continuing on. All right, let's see what it is working on now. So now it's doing the component section, kind of doing a visual breakdown of how each particular part is going to work. Oops, zoom in. So there's a front end React, how all the pages are going to interact with each other. So there's a single key generation form, and all the TypeScript pages. Then they're all going to call the API. Then here's the backend. And as you can see, it's got a flowchart for how all of it works. So we can scroll on, keep going. It's got more things that you can, say, critique, change to your liking. But just for demonstration purposes, we're going to continue on. So now this is the API structure, how all of it works. And once again, you can change any of this to your liking, but it's going to go ahead and move on. Don't really want to go into all that extreme detail in just this demonstration, but as you can see, it's really thinking about all core aspects of this application. Normally in this part, it would go over your database schema and kind of give a lot of information of how you're using your database. With this application, we're not really using a database on purpose just because we're storing private keys and I purposely told it I don't want any of it stored. So none of it's kind of really being stored. So it's kind of a very thin or light section. Let's go ahead and go into the next section. But normally in this part, you would have an extreme amount of detail on your database schema, how you're indexing, all sorts of stuff. And you help formulate exactly how you want things configured. Now it's giving some standard formats for, looks like your TypeScript for your front end. It's giving some component templates for your TypeScript, more state management architecture. So as you can see, it built quite a bit of standard templates for your various TypeScript files, your state management architecture, and your service examples. So I don't want, once again, want to bore you with it all, so we're just going to go on to the next step. But once again, you could have made any changes you wanted to this and kind of told it what you liked, what you didn't like, and would have made adjustments accordingly. In this step, you can see that it started now working on the backend architecture, the folder structure of all the files, where they should be stored, the controller template for TypeScript. We went into database architecture, how it wants it all to work. And once again, you can comment on how you want things to change, how the API key guard is going to work. But let's go ahead and move on. Now it took a unified project structure and shows you how all the files are going to break down, including both backend and front end. I kind of told it earlier to do a mono repo. It's going to have everything in this repo. Just kind of depending on the application, the size of the application, and how you want it broken up. Sometimes if you want a multi-repo, you can handle things like that. But for this, I just kind of did a mono repo, just for simplicity purposes. Let's go ahead and go to the next section. In this next section, let's see what all it did. Development workflow, how to set up everything, how to install the needed components, GPG, how to do git clone of the repo, how to start the dev, all the commands associated with it. That's fine. Let's go ahead and go to the next section. Now, went over deployment architecture, the front end deployment, how that all is going to be done, how the back end deployment's all going to be ran. It's kind of giving all the commands, stuff like that. And here's a GitHub Actions, how to deploy it when you add it to your GitHub and push it up there, and kind of the URLs for all the things for testing, production, etc. So let's go ahead and go to the next section. Let's see what the next section was. Security and performance. That's going to build all of that. Authentication, security, token storage, what it recommends. Here's some JavaScript on examples, front-end performance, what it expects, and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and go to the next section. I think we're almost done. Now in this section, it looks like it wrote out all the testing strategy, the structure, the testing organization, the front-end components, the back-end components for testing. You could even say, hey, this is nice, but I want you to use something like Playwright. Please help me redo this differently, etc. And you kind of add that again once with like Architect and say, do this with Architect or with Playwright or whatever. But just for demonstration purposes, we're just going to go ahead and go next. Now, after that, it looks like it came out with coding standards for the development agent to use and goes over the various coding standards it wants to use. But you could add to this to your liking. But for this purpose, we're just going to go ahead and move forward. All right, and this next section looks like it's doing an error handling strategy, how the error flows will work, how it's going to handle those in an error envelope, front-end error handling helper, back-end error handling, front-end interceptor. This is the point where you can tell it, hey, I want to use whatever product you want to use for that, or any change you want to make to this. If you want to use Datadog or something to that effect for error handling, you can tell it here that you'd want to do that. But let's go ahead and move forward. Architect 1, let's go ahead and move forward. Previously went over error handling. Now this is monitoring observability, how you can kind of tell it how you want to do these various things. Here's just kind of some basic information it's capturing or how it's going to do those particular tasks. I would recommend kind of telling it here that this is where you'd want to use Datadog, stuff like that. But for the purpose of the video, let's just go ahead and move forward. Now you see it's creating architecture.md. It's going to be quite a lengthy file. Looks like it's finished writing it. Let's go take a look at what it looks like. Move this over, right click, open preview. Yeah, it's a long file. So, wow, it's got a lot of diagrams, a lot of information. So this is the document that you'll eventually feed your developer agent. Since this document is so long, it will eat into your context window. You can see here, it's already eaten into 25% of my context window. So if you're feeding such a large document into your LLM, it may have issues having enough context window left to kind of create what you're looking for it to do. So the next steps we'll go over, it'll be about sharding this document as well as handing this file over to your project owner, which is going to verify that your architecture aligns with your brief, your front end, and your PRD. It's almost like a verification step. Oh yeah, and also make sure to keep all so it actually saves the file. So keep all, save the file. But that's kind of where we've kind of completed, and I'll see you in the next video.